My family laughed when I almost died, so I did something extreme. The smell of Mom's famous pot roast wafted through the house, filling the space with a sense of comfort. I hated to admit it, but it always made me feel at home. The family had gathered around the table, ready to eat, and for a fleeting moment, everything seemed normal. But then I saw the look on Zane's face. He was smirking in that way that made my stomach twist in knots. It was the kind of grin that always meant trouble was coming. I should have known something was off. "Taylor, you look a little pale," Zane remarked, taking a sip of his wine. His voice was light, teasing. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile as I tried to ignore the headache that had been gnawing at my temples all day. I had taken my medication, but it hadn't worked as usual. Maybe it was stress, maybe something else. I'd been trying to ignore it for weeks, but it wasn't getting better. "Are you sure? Because, last month when you were complaining about your meds, I think I may have done something funny." Zane's voice trailed off as he tapped his wine glass, drawing everyone's attention. I felt my pulse quicken. The room seemed to freeze, and I stared at him, suddenly afraid. "What did you do?" Mom asked, her voice full of playful curiosity. I could already see the amusement in her eyes. She never took anything seriously. It was always the same. Zane could do no wrong in her eyes. Zane's grin widened. "I might have swapped Taylor's migraine pills with sugar tablets," he said, leaning back in his chair as if he had just told a harmless joke. There was a long pause. Aunt Rachel stopped mid-bite, her fork suspended in the air. "You did what?" she asked, incredulously. Mom, however, just laughed. "Oh, Zane, you're such a prankster." But I wasn't laughing. The air felt heavy, suffocating. The realization hit me hard, and my hand trembled under the table as I reached for my glass of water. This wasn't funny. This wasn't some harmless joke. The migraines I had been dealing with for years had been debilitating. They had cost me jobs, days of productivity, and worse, the pain left me curled up in darkness, unable to function. Zane didn't understand any of that. No one in this room seemed to understand. I finally managed to speak, though my voice came out much steadier than I expected. "So that's why I've been in so much pain lately. That's why I almost lost my job." Zane rolled his eyes. "Come on, sis. It was just a joke." I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. The sound was like a knife through the air. "No, Zane," I said, my voice cold. "You don't get to laugh this off. Not this time." The room fell silent after my outburst. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to control the fury rising inside me. I could feel all the eyes on me now. Mom's, Zane's, Aunt Rachel's, even Quentin's. Mom was the first to speak, her voice tight with a mixture of confusion and amusement. "Taylor, sweetie, I think you're overreacting. It was just a prank. Zane didn't mean any harm." I clenched my fists, trying to push back the tears of frustration that were threatening to spill. "It's not a prank, Mom. It's not funny. I've been suffering for weeks, and you all just laughed it off." I looked around the table, my eyes meeting each of their gazes. "I can't believe you're making excuses for him. I'm your daughter, your sister." Zane shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His earlier confidence had dimmed, but his smirk still lingered on the edges of his face. Okay, I get it. I shouldn't have done it. But you're overreacting, Ty. It was just a joke. Relax." "Relax?" I shot back, my voice rising in anger. "How can I relax when I'm in constant pain and nobody takes me seriously? Not even you, Zane? Not even you, Ma?" Aunt Rachel stood up abruptly. "Taylor's right. You don't get to make fun of someone's illness, not when it's something they can't control. You should be ashamed of yourself." She was usually quiet at family gatherings, preferring to watch from the sidelines, but this time she wasn't holding back. Mom's face hardened at Aunt Rachel's words, but she didn't respond. Instead, she focused on me, trying to soften her expression. "Look, I know you're upset, but we're family. Zane didn't mean to hurt you. We'd all love you, and you know that, right?" I shook my head, feeling like the ground beneath me was crumbling. "You don't get it. It's not about love. It's about respect. And right now, I don't feel respected. I've been fighting this pain alone for so long, and no one has ever taken it seriously. Not until it was too late." I stood up then, not caring that my chair fell over behind me. I didn't want to be here anymore. I couldn't breathe, not in this space where no one seemed to understand or care. I'm leaving, I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and sadness. I didn't look back as I stormed out of the house, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the cold air. I didn't know where I was going, but I just needed to get away from that table, from their judgmental eyes, from the laughter that echoed in my ears. My head throbbed harder than ever, but this time it was different. The weight of the moment felt like it had lifted something inside me. I needed a change, and I wasn't going to let them take me for granted anymore. I ended up walking for what felt like hours, just letting the cool evening air numb the sharp edges of my thoughts. When I finally reached the small coffee shop near my apartment, I felt a strange sense of calm. I stepped inside, ordered my usual, a black coffee, and sat down by the window, my mind racing. I thought about Zane and how he had always gotten away with everything. The pranks, the jokes, the endless teasing, but this time it wasn't funny, and I wasn't going to just let it slide. Anaka, my friend from college, had always been a problem solver. She was an auctioneer, a bit eccentric but sharp as a tack, and I knew I could count on her for help. I pulled out my phone and sent her a quick text. "Need your help. It's time to get serious about something." A few minutes later, she replied. "Serious? You know I'm in for anything. What's up?" I stared at the screen, my heart pounding as the idea started to take shape. The elephant collection. Mom's prized glass elephants, the thing she cherished more than me. I want to auction off the elephant collection. Use the money for something meaningful. Something that actually helps. There was a long pause before Anaka responded. "You're serious? You want to auction your mom's collection?" "Yes, I want to do something with the money. Something real. I'm done being the punchline of their jokes." A few seconds later, her response came through. "You know I'm always up for a challenge. Let's do it. I'll help you make this happen." The weight of the decision settled on my shoulders, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of control. I wasn't just going to be a victim in my own story. I was going to change the narrative. The next few days were a blur of planning. I reached out to a few trusted people, including Quentin, who was always ready to support me when I needed him most. He didn't question my motives. He just nodded when I told him about the auction plan. "We'll do this right," he said, his face serious. "But you know we'll have to get into your mom's house while she's out. She's always got her eye on those elephants." I nodded. Mom was meticulous about the collection. Each piece was carefully displayed in a glass cabinet in her living room. She had always told me how precious they were, how they had been passed down through the family. I never cared much about the glass trinkets, but I knew they meant the world to her. But if they meant that much to her, then surely they could be used for something bigger. Something that could help people like me, people who needed help and never got it. We waited for the perfect moment. Mom was heading out for a weekend retreat with her friends, and I knew this was the time. The plan was simple. Get in, take the elephants, and get out. It was a Friday night when Quentin and I snuck into her house. We made sure everything was quiet, and as we moved through the rooms, I felt a strange mixture of guilt and exhilaration. This wasn't just about getting back at her. It was about taking control of my life, for once. I glanced at the glass cabinet where the elephants sat, glittering under the dim light. Each one was unique, a delicate work of art, but what mattered now wasn't the beauty of the pieces. It was what they could do for people who didn't have the luxury of pain-free days like Mom did. "Ready?" Quentin asked, his voice barely a whisper. I nodded, and with one final glance at the collection, I opened the cabinet. The sound of glass sliding against glass echoed in the quiet room as I carefully lifted the first elephant figurine from the display. It was small but intricate, its tusks curling upward, the glass gleaming in the low light. I felt a pang of hesitation as I held it in my hands. This was my mom's prized possession, one of the few things that had ever mattered to her, and here I was preparing to sell it. But then I thought about the long hours I'd spent alone, the pain no one cared to understand, the laughter that felt more like mockery than love. This was about me. For the first time in years, this was about me, and I couldn't go back now. Quentin worked quickly beside me, his hand steady as he placed each piece into the box we brought with us. "We've got to move fast. If we're caught, there's no turning back," he whispered, glancing toward the hallway, where I knew Mom's voice would soon echo in from the front door. I nodded, my breath shallow as I continued to lift each delicate elephant from its perch. The world outside the house seemed to grow distant, like the quiet ticking of time had stopped. My focus was on the task: get in, get out, and leave no trace behind. For once, I was doing something for me. As we finished packing the last of the elephants, I closed the lid of the box gently, as though I were cradling fragile memories that would never truly leave me. Quentin glanced at me, his expression unreadable. I could tell he was trying to gauge my emotions, whether I felt remorse or relief, but there was no time for a heart-to-heart. "Let's go," he urged, his voice soft but insistent. We moved quickly through the house, slipping out the back door to avoid being seen. The darkness of the night swallowed us as we made our way to the car. I felt the weight of the box pressing against my chest, but the rush of adrenaline kept me moving. It was as if the world had paused, and I was the one who was finally taking control. The next few days were a whirlwind. Anaka was ready. She had already lined up a few interested buyers for the elephants, rich collectors who would pay top dollar for rare and exquisite pieces. We met in her office, which was cluttered with auction flyers, catalogs, and artifacts. She was in her element, orchestrating the sale with a calculated precision I could only admire. "You did the right thing, Taylor," Annika said as she examined the elephants. "These will fetch a lot more than you think." I looked at the pieces laid out in front of me, their beauty almost overwhelming in the stark lighting of her office. They gleamed with the brilliance of a life I had never felt a part of. These elephants, so precious to my mother, would soon be gone, and I knew the money they brought in would go towards something that mattered more than they ever did. "But what if she finds out?" I asked, my voice wavering. Annika raised an eyebrow, her fingers tracing the edge of a particularly ornate elephant. "You'll have to face that when the time comes. But right now, you need to focus on what you're doing this for. The auction is tomorrow, and once it's done, you'll have the funds to make a real change." I nodded, taking a deep breath. I had already made up my mind. There was no going back. The morning of the auction was a blur. I stood in front of the mirror in my small apartment, staring at my reflection, still processing everything that had happened. The elephants were gone, and soon the money would follow. But what would happen next? Would Mom come after me? Would she even care? The thought of her reaction filled me with a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. Part of me wanted to explain myself, to tell her why I did it. But another part of me feared that she would never understand. Not until it was too late. I grabbed my phone and sent a quick text to Quentin. "Ready for whatever comes next." His reply was almost instant. "I've had your back, no matter what." The auction was a success. The elephants sold for an astounding amount, far more than I could have hoped for. As I watched the transaction unfold, I felt a rush of excitement. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the feeling that I had finally done something for myself. The pain, the years of feeling invisible, it was all starting to fade into the background. But the relief didn't last long. That evening, as I walked into my apartment, I received a call from Mom. My heart skipped a beat. "Taylor, where are you?" she demanded, her voice cold and sharp. "I'm home." And I noticed something's missing. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. "What do you mean?" "The elephants," she said, her voice shaking with barely contained fury. "Where are they?" I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her anger pressing down on me. I had no choice but to come clean. "They're gone, Mom. I sold them." There was a long silence on the other end of the line before she finally spoke again, her voice soft but filled with disbelief. "Why? Why would you do that?" I took a deep breath, my hand shaking as I clutched the phone. "Because I needed to. I've been in pain for so long, and you never even noticed. You and Zane, you both thought it was all just some joke. Well, I'm done being the joke, Mom. I'm taking control of my life." There was another long pause before she spoke, her voice now trembling. "I never meant to hurt you, Taylor. I didn't know it was that bad." I felt a lump form in my throat. "You were too busy with everything else, Mom. You never saw me. But now I'm doing something for myself. I'm making a change." The line went silent again, and I could almost feel her trying to process everything I had just said. "I need time, Taylor," she finally said, her voice small. "I need to think." And with that, the conversation ended. The next few weeks were filled with uncertainty. I used the money from the auction to pay for therapy sessions, medical treatments, and things I had put off for years. The pain, both physical and emotional, was still there, but I felt more in control than I had in a long time. And slowly, things started to change. The bond with my family was fractured, yes, but maybe that was something we could rebuild. Maybe in time they would understand, and even if they didn't, I knew that I had taken the first step toward healing. I had finally stopped being the invisible one in my own life.